Thank you, Cheryl. Can you hear me okay? No? Can you hear me okay? All right. I didn't want to have to hold this, but I guess I'm going to have to, but that's okay. So, a little bit about myself. I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin. It's all in my bio in my book. But I ended up going to West Point, and when I was in the Army, when you gave a talk to a group, this is how you did it. You tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. But I'm not going to do that today. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the California Republican Assembly, maybe mention the Arizona Republican Assembly, and then I'm going to talk about, of course, the Precinct Committeeman strategy, and then I'm going to talk about how we're going to save the Republic. And everybody in this room's got to be part of it. We've got to get everybody on board. I don't know if you heard Donald Trump's speech when he announced he was running for re-election. He said it's my campaign, but it's really our campaign. He said that at the beginning. And at the end, he said, the only way we're going to win this is if every patriot gets on board. Now, what I wanted him to say was, the only way we're going to win this is if we get every patriot to become a voting member of their Republican local committee, however that works in the state they live in, including here in California. So that's why I'm here today. So up on the screen there, this is from the website of the CRA. The mission of the California Republican Assembly is. And I'm not going to read all those to you, but they're all good things to strive for, you know. And it's something that I think would be better served if you focused on how you're going to achieve all those mission goals. Okay, so I think the mission statement would be better if you added the how part at the end. And the how part is this: you guys have to create in the voting ranks of the California Republican Party committees a majority of CRA members. In essence, what you'd end up doing is, there it is again, create in the voting ranks of the California Republican Party committees a majority of CRA members. The goal is that the California Republican Committee becomes the California Republican Assembly, and every individual committee of the Republican Party becomes, the CRA essentially becomes the Republican Party. That's what the goal ought to be. So, our crucial goal right now is we have to figure out a way to elect better people so we get rid of the black box selection machines. And there's only one group of people who can do that, and they're in every state, and it's the state legislators. Only the state legislators can do that. So our goal has to be to elect better state legislators. In Arizona, for 10 years, we've had a Republican governor, not anymore, but we did. For 10 years, we had a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. Why didn't they fix things? Why didn't they get rid of those machines? It's because a lot of those Republicans aren't really Republicans. And it's our fault as Arizonans for re-electing these clowns and not vetting them properly. So we got to elect better people. So we have two major obstacles in doing this. We don't have enough conservatives in the party, and then once you get into the party, there's no communication tool. We're going to solve that via the Precinct Committeeman strategy, both of those things. So again, the two major obstacles that we have. We don't have enough numbers, and we don't have enough locally. Now, full disclosure, my precinct, the way it works in Arizona, I have 10 slots. All 10 are filled by America Firsters. That just didn't happen. It happened because I and others went and found other America Firsters and recruited them. But the average in Arizona is 2/3 of the precinct committeeman slots in any given precinct are vacant. That's what I'm trying to fix. And then once you get them all filled, and while you're filling them, you have to have an easy way to communicate online, better than email. And we've got that figured out, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So this is what I do with my time. The only reason I came over here today is because my filter, if people are constantly contacting me, Dan, can you do this, can you do that, and this is what I think. Okay, how will that use of my time cause even one more precinct committeeman slot in the country, voting member slot of any committee? Like here in California, it's your executive committees at your county, your assembly district, your supervisory districts. I'm here because I want CRA members to fill vacant slots and run for every one of those slots and take over the Republican Party. So again, this immediate goal that we have to have hand-counted paper ballots, no machines, mailed ballots only for military and invalids, small precincts, and one-day election. So on the right is the goal. Now, I was a Boy Scout. I went to West Point. I was an intelligence officer. Had to, figure out ways to go get information about our bad guys. And then I became a trial lawyer. And it's the process of my thinking always is this: figure out what the goal is, and then work backwards from that goal. So if I'm going to trial, I have to be able to say certain things to the jury. So I work backwards. How do I get that evidence? Well, here's the goal on the right. Let's go right to left. If we want to get the hand-counted paper ballots, no machines, mail ballots only, et cetera, what do we have to have immediately prior to that? Well, we have to have America First state legislators and governors enacting their laws into law. So how do we get that? We'll go to the left. Well, America Firsters have to win the primary and then the general election. So how do we do that? We'll go to the left. Well, we have to have much greater turnouts of America First voters. In 2022 in Arizona, turnout in the general election was 50%. We're allowing this crap to happen because we don't get out the vote. Now go to the left again. How do we get those much greater turnouts? We have to get every Republican Party precinct committeeman slot filled by a volunteer America Firster. So here in California, you got to fill up every committee slot and then try to build down at the precinct level a get out the vote team. So here's the common sense voting that we used to have in this country. By the way, this great artist created this chart. That was me. So you have a printer prints out a ballot. Doesn't have to be on magic paper with serial numbers and holograms, a piece of paper. And then a voter marks the paper for the entry that they want for that particular race. Then those ballots go to teams of 3 that hand count the marks, and then you get the results. That's what we used to have. That's how civilized countries in the world do it, but not ours. Okay, so there on the left is what I described before. On the right is what we have. We have a system that is designed to manufacture results and then to prevent evidence of the manufacturing of the results to ever be discovered or developed. So on election day ballots, they're on the right side, on the left column, there, the middle there, is the ballots go into something called a black box machine with the question mark. There are results. The mailed ballots, the Postal Service mails out ballots to somebody, and then they come back in an envelope, in another envelope that was in the original envelope with a scribble on it, and then they're separated. And then the separated ballots go through a black box, and then you get the black box results totaled. Once that envelope with the scribble on it and the ballot gets separated, you can never get the two together again because it's a secret ballot. You don't get to know what envelope is connected with which ballot. That's why you'll never be able to get the black box results before a court, and you'll never be able to get an illegal ballot before a court because you can't prove any single ballot was cast illegally. This system is rigged to manufacture results and then prevent the manufacturing the results from ever being proven. We got to get rid of that. So on the left there is the description of the gold standard. Simple, common sense, inexpensive, hand-counted paper ballot voting systems. What are the requirements? 2 pieces of paper, paper ballots, and volunteers to hand count the ballots. On the right is this Rube Goldberg complicated system that we have. Costly purchased or leased machines, licensed black box software, costly contractor machine operators, costly programmers, machine certifications. You can read it all there. And I'll give this PowerPoint to anybody who wants it. Just give me your email address and I'll send it to you. All this complication, okay? Wires, training, government overseers of the contractors, training for the contract overseers, and on and on and on. And then, of course, we have a month of voting, day after day after day at voting centers, and that all has to be staffed and everything else. But on the left, look, paper ballots, hand counted, 1 day. So I costed out what it would cost to do, assuming a small precinct, 1,000 voters in the precinct, and assuming all 1,000 voted. Well, if you had 3-person teams, 1 adult unpaid volunteer and 2 high school students that you paid $15 an hour, imagine that. High school students learning how our election process works. Wouldn't that be great? And then assume you take teams with just 50 ballots, okay? So I timed it out. It would take 5 minutes for 50 ballots to be hand counted, first by 1 student, then by the second, double checking the first result. And if they match, then you go to the next race. Assuming 30 races on the ballot, that would take about 150 minutes, 2.5 hours. But let's round it up to 3 hours to make the math easier. Cost, $1,800, okay? And anybody could come and observe this. Any voter who wants to observe can observe it. Doesn't require special paper. You just need some chairs and tables. Cost per ballot is roughly $1.80. Well, assuming that we had 150 million people vote in the country, multiply that by $2, that's $300 million, okay, for the whole country. We must spend billions and billions and billions of dollars. Probably here in California, I bet you spend well over $1 billion, I would think, on your election system with all those machines and all that old, you know the complexity. We got to get rid of it. So again, if we had the system where we had what I just described, you wouldn't need all of this stuff. You wouldn't need ballot drop boxes, weeks of voting by mail. You wouldn't even need electricity, except for the printers, right? You wouldn't have counting machines. You wouldn't have internet connection problems. You wouldn't have computers within the machines. You wouldn't have any of this stuff. You'd never have an audit. There's nothing to audit. The only thing you would ever do is do a hand count, a recount of the ballots. Okay? That's what we have to have. So again, let's go left to right this time. If we can get every Republican Party precinct committeeman slot in the country filled by a volunteer America Firster, then we can achieve much greater turnouts of America First voters to win the primary and the general election for America First candidates, to fill up all those state legislature and governor slots, to get us to new laws, putting into law. All the machines are now illegal. You have to have hand-counted paper ballots, no machines, mail ballots only for invalids and military, small precincts, one-day election. That's what we have to get to. So, this is not for you. You guys are making a difference. This is what you've got to ask your friends and neighbors who are America Firsters. Will you make a difference? Will you try to attend a meeting of either the CRA monthly meeting or your county committee or your supervisory district meeting, your whatever the case may be where you happen to live? Will you get involved? Okay, so that pie chart there shows currently what the strength was, currently what it is now, and what it was in 2008. In 2008, this is what the Republican Party looked like nationwide on average everywhere. It's half strength, ideologically split. There's about 400,000 of these precinct committeeman slots, voting member slots. You know, it's different things in different states. California is different than Arizona. It's different than Texas. Every state's unique. You have about half of the 200,000 are, about 100,000 are moderates, about 100,000 are conservatives, 200,000 are vacant. That's 2008. Oops. And it didn't change in 2010. And in 2012, it was the same. And in 2014, it was the same. And in 2016, it was the same. And in 2018, it was the same. And in 2020, this has not changed since 2008. Today, it looks just like this still. Whose fault is that? It's not the RNC's fault, and it's not the state chair's fault. It's our fault. We are not recruiting America Firsters to fill up all these vacancies. So this is what it could be. Instead of it being a tiny circle, half-strength, ideologically split, if we filled up the 200,000 vacancies, now it's not a split anymore between moderates and conservatives. Now conservatives have a 75% voting majority. Wouldn't that be great? Then we'd start electing to the state chair positions, the national committeeman positions, the national committeewoman positions, America Firsters, like they did in Michigan. Christina Caramo got elected to the state chair. She's not a globalist. It happened in Kansas. It happened in Nebraska. It happened in Idaho. It happened in Colorado. The precinct committeeman strategy works when enough America Firsters work it. So again, where is the GOP? Why aren't they recruiting? Well, I'll explain that in a minute. And what is the GOP? What is the Republican Party? Well, if you've ever seen the movie Soylent Green, you'll remember this scene. The Republican Party is people. It's people. And really, that's all it is. It's not a building. It's not a pile of money. It's a bunch of people, right? Look at the CRA. It's a bunch of people. We got to have more America Firsters join the Republican Party in the voting ranks. So this goes all the way back to Abraham Lincoln. Now, maybe some of you are aware of this, but when he was a Whig, he wrote this up here. He goes, "You got to organize the whole state down at the local level, divide it into districts, and appoint in each somebody. Then make a perfect list of the voters and ascertain with certainty for whom they will vote." Now remember, there were no telephones then. There were no automobiles. He was doing this with, donkeys and horses, and the U.S. Postal Service, and one-on-one contact. Keep a constant watch on the doubtful voters and have them talked to by those in whom they have the most confidence. On election day, see that every Whig is brought to the polls. That was in a letter to a friend in 1840. Harry Truman said he was a precinct captain in Missouri. The most important job I ever had was precinct captain. He said he was introduced, this was in a newspaper article in, 1956. And I was introduced, after he got introduced, he said, "I was introduced not as a former president, but as the #1 precinct captain. I am just as proud of that title as I am of the title of president. I have been a precinct worker and precinct captain and am a precinct worker today. My goal is to get Donald Trump to become a precinct committeeman in Palm Beach County, Florida." So one of the fundamental lessons I have learned is this, Truman said. In politics, the work that is done in the precincts is the work that counts the most. And I don't know, I don't have it in my slides here, but the Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly's group, now Phyllis has passed away, but the Eagle Forum has a great pamphlet. The title of it is, "The most powerful office in the world is not the President of the United States." And then when you open it up, it says it's precinct committeeman, and they're absolutely right. So back in 1962, there was this thing called the Precinct Education Program. You know who created this in 1962? The RNC at the time, the NRCC, and the NRSC, because they had gotten their clocks cleaned in the 1960 presidential election. And they figured, this TV and radio business, it's not working. Maybe we should go back to like what Abraham Lincoln said. And so it's the Precinct Education Program. By the way, I have this on my communications and collaboration platform in a file folder. You can download this. It's a 120-page PDF. A friend of mine is kind of like me. He's a Precinct Committeeman nerd. And he actually searches on eBay for Precinct Committeeman related stuff, and he found this thing on the internet. So this is going to be too small for you to read, but basically what it said, I just highlighted a couple of pages, but basically what they said here is, this is Bob Wilson, he was the head of the NRCC at the time. He's explaining, look, we talked to political consultants, and they've all said the way you really boost turnout is at the precinct level, person to person, because most people, thinking people, want to make a good decision, and they usually rely on friends that they know. So doing it that way is the best way to boost turnout. It says the precinct methods in the course have been proven in actual elections where used. They increase the Republican vote from 3% to 15%, often more. And I have a video on my website that explains how I've done it in my own precinct. And in every general election, we get 90% plus of Republicans to the polls. So this program works. So I want you to get this document. Like I said, I'll show you in a minute where to go to download it. The Precinct Education Program spells out in detail how to follow Lincoln's advice, breaks it down into steps and provides a framework for doing what Lincoln said, essentially. So they updated what Lincoln said. I showed you that quote earlier. So this is my website, and precinctstrategy.com, and there, right there, it says, look, on February 27th, Donald Trump endorsed the Precinct Committeeman strategy. Now what I'm trying to do is get him to talk about it when he talks to groups. He spoke last night in Lee County, Florida, at a Lincoln Day dinner, but he didn't say one word about the Precinct Committeeman strategy. And the way I know that is, if he had, my text messages would have, I would have been bombarded with text messages about it, but he didn't say anything, unfortunately. But he was talking to Precinct Committeeman, so that's great that he was at a Lincoln Day dinner. Okay, so, I don't know, 2013-ish, I took my website at the time and I turned it into an ebook, and then Richard Viguerie had a contest. He wanted to write a book called Takeover. How are we going to take the 100-year war for the soul of the GOP and how conservatives can finally win it? And he said, I've got a Liberty Prize contest. I'll give $10,000 to the person who sends me in 300 words or less the best way to take over the Republican Party. So I did a submission, and I won half the prize. And it took me about 7 years to get the money, but only because they screwed up, But the Precinct Strategy is in his book, and then I wrote my book, How to Get in the Real Ball Game of Politics, Where You Live to Help President Donald J. Trump Make America Great Again. Catchy title, huh? So, now let's talk about my site versus the RNC site. Now, think of it. What organization do you know doesn't want more members? Yeah, the RNC, exactly. Think about that. The CRA wants more members, but the RNC doesn't want more Republican Party voting members. They want more Republican voters, they want more Republican volunteers, but they'll never breathe a word about how to become a voting member of their organization. So this is what is not found on the RNC's GOP website. Why and how to become a voting member of one's local Republican Party committee. That's not there. How to find one's local Republican Party. It's not on the GOP.com website. And then whether or not there's an online communications and collaboration platform. It's not on the RNC website, but it is on my website. Why and how to become a voting member is right on the main page. I have a paragraph that explains exactly how to do it. Then below that is how to find one's local Republican Party committee, step by step. And then this is the communications and collaboration platform that Robert Beadle's built for us. There's chat rooms. There's a main feed where you can post stuff to everybody. Is this crapping out on me? Okay, maybe the batteries are going. You can't hear me as, can you? Hello? Can you hear me? You can? Okay. No? Yes? Now? I'll yell. It came back. And so you can share documents. So that document I showed you, the Precinct Education Program, it's in a file folder on this site. And this is free. You sign up, you get on it, and now you can start communicating. There's over 1,200 Californians on this site. There's over 15,400 nationwide. I want you all to get on it, okay? So why don't the people who you think ought to be promoting the precinct committeeman strategy and recruiting precinct committeemen, why don't they do it? Well, incumbent office holders, they love everything to stay just the same. If nothing changes, they're going to get reelected. Even the conservatives. Andy Biggs, he'll never talk about the precinct committeeman strategy. David Schleichert, he won't talk about it. I haven't heard Kevin McCarthy talk about it. And I don't think I ever will. Conservative candidates as well, they're afraid early on in their campaign if they, this thing is, it kind of comes and goes, I'm sorry, I don't know why. Early on in their campaign, they're afraid that if they go out and recruit other conservatives to become PCs and help get out the vote, what happens then if a better conservative, a better quote unquote, comes in? They might switch gears, so they don't recruit. The RNC and state party officers, they don't want more PCs because then like somebody like Christina Caramo might defeat a rhino in the race for state chair. So they don't recruit. They'll ask you for your time, your money, and your sweat equity, but they won't recruit you to become a ball player in the real ball game of politics. Well, I don't blame them. That's their self-interest. I blame us. So let's not get mad about it. Let's get even. Become a precinct committeeman here in California. Get on your executive committee. Run for executive committee. So here's the key thing. America First Americans must take over the Republican Party as their organizational tool for achieving their political goals. Period. End of story. That's what we have to do. So we need a line and block chart like this for every state. So this is a simple one I did for Arizona. So this is the way it works in Arizona. Registered Republican voters elect precinct committeemen. Then precinct committeemen follow the arrow right below precinct committeemen. They elect directly legislative district committee officers, county committee officers, and then state committeemen. One state committeeman for every 3 elected precinct committeemen. Those state committeemen go on to elect the state chair directly. That's real political power. You're in the ball game when you're a precinct committeeman in Arizona. And then they also, the other arrow goes to, we're going to elect in March of next year the state convention delegates. Who do the state convention delegates elect? National committeeman and committeewoman, national convention delegates. Anybody can go to the caucus to elect the state convention delegates, but only precinct committeemen get to vote. So a lot of people will show up and we'll look at those people and they want to be a Trump delegate. Well, where have you been for the last 4 years? They usually don't get elected. Usually the only way they get elected is if enough of the precinct committee, not enough of the precinct committeemen showed up to fill every slot, because the precinct committeemen will vote for one another, because they know each other. So the first step in reaching our goal to fill all of these slots, however it works in your state, is we have to cure ourselves of what I call CPPPDS. Anybody know what that is? Okay. It's Conservative Political Party Participation Deficit Syndrome. And there's only one cure for it. It's within each of us. So again, just some graphics. See, again, you've seen these 2 pie charts. See the difference? On the left is what we have right now. On the right is what it could be. This is another way to look at it. The problem is this. Precinct committeemen, there's 400,000 slots, but 100,000 are, let's call them others to be polite. 100,000 are Trump precinct committeemen. But then when you go to elect the officers and chairs at the local committees, the county committees, the state committees, and the national committee, like the RNC, it's a 50-50 split or thereabouts. The RNC right now, 70% of at least 70% of the RNC members are globalists, America's sellouts. And that's because not enough conservatives get involved because they suffer from CPPPDS and they got to cure themselves of it. This is what happens when you work the solution. You fill up the vacancies there that had been in the middle. Now you have 300,000 versus 100,000. And now every election all the way to the national committee will be Trump supporters. We thereby Trumplify the party. So again, see the difference? On the left is what we have, on the right is what it could be. So these are the two key, this is the first of two key slots where I try to condense everything on my site. If you go to precinctstrategy.com, this is the first big graphic you're going to see. Where are we going to get the 200,000 that we need? Well, there's 74 million America Firsters, and we only need 0.3% of 74 million. That's a little more than 200,000 to fill those vacancies. I didn't say 3%, I didn't say 1%, I said 0.3% of 74 million. And my mic is fading again. Okay, so what do we have to do? We've got all these little groups everywhere that are fantastic. The Moms for Liberty, I think, is speaking here tonight. There's all sorts of moms groups. There's all sorts of Second Amendment groups. There's all sorts of groups against the vaccines and the Build the Wall people and the anti-maskers and taxed enough already Tea Partiers and the Right to Lifers. And there's more than I even have here. But where we're not is we're not united in one unifying organization. So think of it like, okay, there's political goals that I have for my issue. Let me think here. What kind of an organization should I join for my political activities and goals? Maybe a political organization called a political party? We have to unite in our local Republican Party committees. Take your pet issue into the Republican Party to get out the vote for the best conservative in the primary election so that they win. So again, you've seen this before. This doesn't really apply to you. This is what you have to say to people that you're trying to recruit into our fight, into our movement. Ask them, you think everything's going great in the country right now? They're going to say no. If they say yes, they'll just move on to the next person. But then ask them, well, what do you think is the top 1, 2, or 3 issues? Ask them what those are. I'll give you a way that we can start fixing that. We got to unite in the Republican Party in the voting member slots of it. So the missing ingredient is you and conservatives like you say to them. I'm not saying that to you, I'm saying that to your recruits. We all have to become recruiting machines. So this is my simple 3-step strategy to restore America. Step 1, pray. I recommend 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name, this is God, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. We have got to get right with God. Pray unceasingly. Step 2, recruit precinct committeemen. Step 3, repeat. Pray, recruit, repeat. So I say this at the end of my podcast and usually when I talk. There's no guarantee that if we do this, if we fill up every vacant precinct committeeman slot, that we're going to save the Republic. I can't guarantee you that. Cannot guarantee you that. But we'll have a shot at it. But I can guarantee you the flip side of that. I've studied communism. I got paid to study communism. We're going through a soft coup right now. If we don't do that, if we do not make that first step, if we do not take over, face it, the conservatives in this country, the Trumpers, are not in control of a party. We do not control the Republican Party, and we should. And we can do it if we participate in it, if we fill up all those vacancies. Okay? I guarantee you if we don't achieve that, we're going to lose the Republic. say hello to socialism and worse. So, I want to go back to that original statement I made of adding to your mission the how, by creating a majority of CRA members in the voting ranks of the California Republican Party. And if you want my book, I'll have it out there. I brought a few copies. It's $10. It's also online on Amazon for like $3.99. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's free. So I hope I'm not offending anybody, but when I was thinking about the current state of the Republican Party, this came to mind. But it doesn't have to be that way. This is what it could be. So who's with me? And if I don't want to spoil your dinner or lunch rather, so I'll just leave this one out. So I'll take questions if anybody has any questions, if that's appropriate. I mean, I don't want to spoil your dinner. Yeah.
I got on your website, and I did this because I'm a member of the Central Committee now.
Oh.
And I was looking to try to connect with people that want to get involved in this, and I just couldn't navigate it. Is there a way to...
Have you watched the tutorial video? Yeah, he said he went on the website, the communications and collaboration platform, and he's having trouble using it. Well, there's a tutorial video. And so on my website right now, I've tried to put on the homepage at precinctstrategy.com, I've tried to put on my homepage, like, just sort of in a logical progression, everything. So the sign-up page, the sign-up button is at the second button, which you went to and then signed up. Then if you scroll down, there's a link to a tutorial video. It's also on the site in the main feed. Robert Beadles, it takes 7.5 minutes, and he says, okay, here's how to find other people, here's how to direct message them, here's how to set up chat rooms, here's how to do all that stuff. So that's what you've got to do. Yeah, sure. Anybody else?
One day to vote. One day.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening, and thanks for having me.